Back with the market right here on ET now. Let's shift focus to AkzoNobel. They've launched a super premium clean air paint. They've strengthened their distribution and a lot of new launches as well lined up when it comes to the economy as well as waterproofing segment. So let me welcome on board Rajiv Rajgopal, the MD at AkzoNobel, joining in on the show right now. Rajiv, hi, good morning. Good to have you on the show. With every passing quarter, Rajiv, your revenue and volume trajectory only improves. You've taken a series of initiatives in the last 1 year, as we understand, more penetration, launches in value segment. How has all of that helped boost up your numbers?
So good morning, Aisha. Good morning to all of you and the viewers. Yes, over the last 1 year, we've tried to rejig our portfolio. When sort of we looked at the business, there was 70% of the growth in the paints industry was coming in from the economy segment and the waterproofing segment. And it was imperative for us to make sure that we had products that were able to compete effectively in the marketplace. And also help to fuel distribution. If you look at AkzoNobel, we've got a strong presence in the metros and the top 2,500, 3,000 towns. And in a country which has got 10,000 towns, obviously to get growth, it's an imperative to make sure that you start building your distribution network. So getting the products in was the first. So we launched a product called Dulux Promise Smart Choice, which is really started doing well. It competes effectively with our competitors in that space. At the top end, as you just mentioned, we've launched a product called Dulux Better Living, bio-based in Delhi. We've just started the launch and we will be bringing it to all the markets over the period of time between now and Diwali. This product is the first of its kind. It's the first bio-based product in the country. It's 26% bio-based and it uses products like tree oil to try and fight the air pollutants in a house. So I think from our perspective, there are two things. It's about bringing some of the global innovations into India, which is relevant. Two, to try and make sure that we address the gaps in our portfolio. And finally, to start building on thought leadership platforms, which, over a period of time, I'll bring forward to you in terms of what we are thinking to do.
Great. So let's pick it up one by one because, first, when you talk about paint companies as a category, it seems like there are a lot of tailwinds which are currently at play. Residential sales have seen a massive uptake. The second wave hasn't quite impacted those. They continue to remain robust. And then, of course, you've got the, oncoming festival season demand as well, which I'm sure is going to only add to the numbers. But at the same time, you've got that big headwind in the form of rising input cost pressures. How is it that you're balancing both the tailwinds as well as headwinds?
So I think that's a great question. The first thing is, yes, let me first start with the headwinds because, I think you need to address the headwinds before sort of, looking at the tailwind. And yes, the raw material prices have seen an inflation like never before. It's 20 to 25% inflation. And despite being a number 4 player in the paints industry, we've not shied away this time from, making sure that we start taking price increases that need to be taken to hold margins, because I think it's imperative for us to make sure our EBIT margins, our return on sale, our commitment has been that we will continue to be a double-digit, EBIT margin. That's something that we do, and doing that, making sure we sort of address the portfolio gaps and bringing in thought leadership. On the tailwinds, you're right. I think it's wonderful to see after a hiatus of about 3 to 4 years that the residential uptick. It's happening across. What large, if you look at the last 2 years, seem to only come in the smaller towns, is now also bouncing back in some of the metros, whether it's Mumbai, Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR, or if you look at Bangalore, there is an uptick happening in Hyderabad. Yeah, so it's good to see this. It's after a hiatus, then particularly because also affected by the pandemic. It's good to see, and it's good for the industry if the real estate bounces back. The project sales contributes to about 25% of our paint sales, and it's good to see that business really bounce back. It's also good to see some of the government infrastructure projects get back in place, as a result of which, hopefully over the next few months, we should see an uptick even in our performance coatings businesses as we move forward. Yeah. So look, I think the tailwinds is coming for a variety of reasons. I think first, this time, I think fortunately from the economy point of view, the lockdown was less impacted because supply chains continue to operate, and as a result of which, it was basically many offices, homes, and etc. that were shut, and in some cases, a few companies, and it really impacted the month of May. If you look at till mid-April, we were doing well, and again, June saw a bit of a bounce back as soon as things started bouncing, and we see that even trending in the month of July and early August. So, I think yes, there is a bit of a tailwind, but I also think that I must compliment. I think the players are obviously putting in all stops across the product portfolios in terms of new products launches, and we are trying to take our share of making sure that we are able to get a faster growth in some of this on the paint side of the business. On the performance coating side of the business, I think it was basically the lockdown that impacted the automotive business, really the month of May. After that, we've seen a good uptick. We've got some good tie-ups with some of the OEM players, and that the team is working hard to make sure we unfold as we move forward. We've seen some very good pickup in the powder business, where the team has done an excellent job over the last few months to try and get an uptick. Remember that we had launched a high-end metallic bonding unit 2 years ago, and we've started seeing fruition. So, again, compliments to the team for the wonderful work they are doing there. Our one business which has been a bit of a challenge has been the protective business, which is basically linked to the oil and gas industry and the power industry, and a little bit on the infrastructure. Over the last couple of months, we've started seeing the business stabilize, and I'm confident that as our larger partners and customers start seeing velocity in their business, because some of their order books are good, as and when execution happens, we'll start seeing an uptick there. So you're right, there is a bit of a tailwind. It's a bit surprising that you're taking price increases, and yet there seems to be a bit of a bullwhip, as we call it, which is happening in the market, and that's primarily happening for two reasons. One, because I think there was a bit of a shrink in consumption over the 2-3 months, and it's just a normalization of that. I think the right way to look at it is to compare yourself versus 2019, and in second half 2020, of course, if you look at the paints industry, the paints industry grew over 2019. So I think that's the right way to look at it. The two halves are very different, and we are sort of posing ourselves to try and make sure that we sort of participate and partake in it.
Also joining in. It's great to connect with you again. Uh, let's talk about a sector which normally markets don't talk about. With paints, we always think it is housing, but you use the word infrastructure. I'm going to add the word automobiles, which is where some presence is there. How are these two sectors likely to move? Because in autos, there is a chip shortage. In infrastructure, when we speak to companies, they tell us, look, there is a there is a yes and no kind of a situation, because demand is there, but availability and raw material is an issue.
So great question, Nikunj. Good morning. So two things. Let me first start with infrastructure, and then I'll come to automotive. So look, infrastructure, if you look at the giants and the big companies which are partaking in the infrastructure, and you look at the order book, I think it's a question of now execution. My belief is that starting now till next year, I think you would start seeing a stronger execution, whether it's airports, railways, whether it's a lot of government led in stuff, or even from a private consumption point of view. I do think that really this is a time for us to now get into solid execution, and to me, hence, I do see a good increase in infrastructure, particularly also in parts like power, oil and gas. To add to it, I do see that the consumption will start going in. I mean, India is a consumption story, and I see no reason why consumption should drop, particularly, the challenge is it secular? And that's where I think, you would see still a larger consumptions in some of these happening in some of the larger towns, etc. But surprise, surprise, despite, the challenge we had in COVID a couple of months ago, Nikunj, what amazed was the fact the way the rural markets have also bounced back. So to me, infrastructure is a big plus. I think it'll take you can talk of a delay of 2-3 months, 5 months, but I think once the project's execution starts, you would see sort of a phenomenal, again, I would like to use the word that we use internally called bullwhip, in terms of the way it sort of picks up. On the automotive, you're right. There is a current shortage, but again, let me tell you, I think there are great times ahead for the industry. I think yeah, while I think the buzzword right now is EV, and a lot of news from various players, including the players who are in ancillary getting into EV in a very big way. Look, I think from an AkzoNobel point of view, our powder coatings is one of the first businesses which has made sure that it's compliant and is going to participate in EV in a huge manner globally. We've got a lot of approvals, etc. So we are already sort of getting ready for it. But I still think EV will take a bit of time in terms of the really moving into a sort of a huge swing in terms of growth. I think the current business, if you were to look at chip shortage, yes, it's slightly impacting it, but I think it's a quarter or a 3 to 4 month at best. My own sense is that if you look at the top players, they're already looking at alternatives. They're looking at best ways to try and address it, because at the end of the day, Diwali is a big time, festive time is a big time. The youth in the country, are today, if you really look at, there is a disposable income which is available. And I think people you would see a spurge in sort of spends on travel. You would see a spurge in spends on, personal being. Today, we are very fortunate that a lot of it is going inside the home in terms of, keeping the homes neat, because work from home is also happening.
So closing comments. The paint industry, in a sense, is one industry which markets they love to re-rate. But there is one de-rating which I see as a challenge, which is the ESG concerns. Because the entire process of making a paint, the chemistry involved in it, it may be a challenge. How are you planning to address it?
So look, we've made a very clear commitment, both globally and in India, of making sure that we are going to be partaking a lead in terms of it. What are we doing? I think first, the management team and I are ourselves getting ourselves sort of equipped to understand what are the needs that we need to do. In terms of certain actions that we have, we've already moved a large percent of our factories onto solar. We are going to take it. We want to be 50% by solar. While the target is 2030, I think we are trying our best to try and see if we can sort of advance it a bit. Recycle packaging, that's another huge area. And you would see by end of the year, AkzoNobel starting to play a lead role in some of the recycled packaging. So I think we've put a very clear sort of part. I think ESG has got three parts to it, Nikunj. First is environment. So I talked about it. The second is really what you can do from a societal perspective. Let me also say our CSR initiatives for AkzoNobel have been, one of a kind. We were one of the few players which said that irrespective, if you're a painter, irrespective of the brand you use, we've partnered with a player called Ekincare, and we've offered it to all the painters in the country who want to get a vaccine. The third is governance. I think I don't need to speak on governance, because I think AkzoNobel stands tall in terms of governance in the paints industry. But even the industry, I must say, I think is very progressive. I think one of the things about all the players in the industry is they take these things very seriously, and I think there are forums in which, as a industry, we look at saying how can we be a leader in the paints and coatings industry in India on the ESG. So you can expect in the next few months a lot of policies, internal policies, a lot of compliances to be enhanced, because I do see this as an area that companies will work on, because it is indeed one of the sort of areas that we need to address significantly to move ahead. But in terms of product compliance, in terms of it, at least from an AkzoNobel perspective, we are highly compliant. We follow Euro norms, which are even more stricter than any norms that we have in Asia.